For 2 weeks, we have been hearing about Democrat socialists in places like Michigan and Wisconsin. The Southern Poverty Law Center continues to be a headache for the far left as their CFO, Heidi, Beirich, was charged by the Department of Justice yesterday. And is there a W in the WNBA? Do you ponder the importance of biblical archaeology? And are the stories of the Bible mere fact or fiction? We ask all of those questions today about faith, and we all wonder about it with two amazing guests, Terry Schilling of the American Principles Project and Dinesh D'Souza, the famed author and director, detailing his recent projects. Now, I'm Robert McNeely, filling in for Jenny Beth today, and this is The Jenny Beth Show.
Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Here is one sentence I did not expect to say out loud today, but the Federal Bureau of Investigation put Senator Chuck Grassley and Congressman Jim Jordan on a list of people spreading Russian disinformation. On that very same list, it wrote down Joe Biden and his family as the victims. Now look at your screen there. The people asking the hard questions were tagged as the threat. The family under investigation were written down as the innocents. That is not law enforcement. That is a federal agency literally picking a side in an election and using a badge to do it. And those documents came out yesterday. The White House Government Transparency Task Force, run by journalist John Solomon, declassified an operation the Bureau called Round River. At least 14 confidential sources had brought the Bureau information about the Biden family. Instead of chasing the information, the Foreign Influence Task Force went to work labeling the people raising it as Russian mouthpieces. Now, the current Bureau Director Kash Patel says he shut that task force down and is digging into whether it was used to bury real investigations. Now, hold that thought because it connects to the very next story. Because on the same day, just yesterday, the woman who ran the Southern Poverty Law Center's intelligence project was arrested. Heidi Beirich is now charged with wire fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering over payments to informants inside the groups she was supposedly tracking. And I want to be careful with my words here. She is charged, not convicted. So she is entitled to her day in court, and her arraignment is next Tuesday, the 18th. But sit with the pattern for a second. You have 20 years of an organization stamped a hate group label on ordinary conservative and Christian groups, and banks and reporters treated that label like truth and gospel. Tea Party Patriots Action lived through a version of that during the Internal Revenue Service targeting scandal. One arm of it was the government, and the other arm, a nonprofit, both of them spending the same years sorting Americans into the protected and the targeted. Now, Terry Schilling of the American Principles Project is going to help me pull that apart in just a minute from now. Two fast things on your vote before we do so. First, the president's lawyers went to the Supreme Court this week and told the justices in writing that this is critical the court act promptly on the mail ballot case because a single district judge has frozen the new verification rules in 23 states and the District of Columbia straight through Election Day. Second, in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, the second largest county in a commonwealth that could decide the Senate, local officials reportedly say that they do not verify citizenship for voters at all. So I want you to think straight about this. That second one is still being confirmed, and we're holding it lightly until we nail it down. But in the meantime, the fight that runs through most of this hour, the far left is not hiding anymore. One of their rising stars just said out loud that he wants government health care to pay for sex procedures on children. Think about this. Their own activists have a written plan to abolish the United States Senate. And the smart set is trying to tell you that woke one all those crazy years are behind us now, but haven't we had enough with AOC and company? I think so. So Terry Schilling calls what we are living now woke too, and he is going to explain why the Democrat establishment did not beat the socialists. It merely surrendered to them. And later on, a voice we have never had on this show, and one you will want to hear. Mr. Dinesh D'Souza is out with a new book regarding biblical archaeology, prophecy, and the last days. We look forward to getting his take on recent events and how that pertains to us mere mortals and the whole of eternity. A lot to get to, Patriots, so let's dive in. My first guest has been leading the fight for the American family for years now. Terry Schilling, president of the American Principles Project. Terry, really a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
My man, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, sir. Good to have you. Let's start where we left off. We have the Round River documents on one side, the arrest of the SPLC's former intelligence chief on the other. From where you sit, is this the same story told twice, one in government and one in nonprofit? And how does this meld together for the average citizen?
Well, look, I think that what we've seen over the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years is a complete exposure of America's elite and most trusted institutions as being completely corrupted and fraudulent, frankly. The Southern Poverty Law Center built up so much credibility by taking on the Ku Klux Klan. And who can be against that, right? But the reality is that they leveraged that into pushing radical and destructive policies on America while also discrediting the people that were there to protect it, right? You can point to a million different organizations that SPLC has slandered and maligned maliciously over the last decade or two. But the reality is that they didn't just stop there with discrediting these organizations and getting them out of the mainstream press and silencing them. It led to actual shootings. Right? The Chick-fil-A shooter at FRC, he was literally there to kill dozens of people that were just trying to uphold the biblical view of marriage, that were trying to protect unborn and preborn children. This is absolutely criminal. And what we've also exposed here with the SPLC, and thank God for the Trump administration for doing this, leading the charge with their DOJ, is we've exposed them as being the political activists that they are and running a real racket. Keep all this money offshore in the Cayman Islands. You'd have to write a book and a novel to have it be this dramatic, but it all turns out to be true. And I'm just so grateful that people are finally facing justice over this.
And you've been right in the front of the fight, Terry. We're grateful for you, even thinking about the Charlottesville right movement that they claim to call that. Of course, it was their development. But again, you've spent your career watching these hate labels get weaponized against ordinary families and faith groups. And the Cayman Islands, my goodness, I thought they were against offshore accounts. Apparently not. But when an outfit like that loses this credibility, as the SPLC has done, what changes for the people who spent years on this list? What do they have to be focused on? Because, I mean, many people have lost their jobs or livelihoods as a result of this.
Well, I think that there's a lot more to uncover. There's a lot more people that need to go to jail and need to face judges and juries here. But the reality is I think conservatives like myself and like you, we need to just prepare for more battle. We need to recognize that this group is finally maybe going to face justice. But at the same time, we just have to keep marching on and keep pointing back to these groups as complete frauds. You know, it's incredible how much I've had to talk about the rise of white nationalism and the rise of Nazism and the new KKK when it was all being funded and promoted by the people that were ringing the alarm bells over it. They were doing it to raise money. They were doing it to discredit an entire political movement as racist and bigoted. It just wasn't true. We're all Christians, right? At the heart of by the way, Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe, before it was in Asia. It was in Africa. Christianity is a universal religion. We don't look at skin color. And they tried to brand Christians as racist, as bigots. Why? It's because we support the family. We support the preborn. We support helping the vulnerable. And they don't want to help the vulnerable. They want to sterilize them. They want to kill them and discard them. If you, when it comes to the left, if you are someone that gets in the way of their agenda, they have no problem wiping you out. And that doesn't matter if it's you're a Christian or if you're just supporting lower taxes. They want to get rid of you. And so we just got to keep building, keep marching forward because we're winning. Right? This is the thing. We took over the White House again. We took over the DOJ, and now people are going to jail. So now all these other left-wing groups have to realize, hey, this could very well happen to me because Donald Trump, of all people, still managed to get to the White House and enact justice here. So if anything, I think it'll hopefully have a chilling effect, and it'll also empower future Republican administrations to enforce the law when so many other administrations turn a blind eye to it.
Such an excellent point, and that's why we can't take our foot off the gas for the midterms, especially that Trump supporter that sometimes, I'm going to sit this one out. Now is not the time. So let's turn to the people who want to run the country next. Abdul Al-Sayed, who won the Democratic Senate primary in Michigan. Here is what he said about health care for kids. Watch this clip.
Health care should be a choice made by a patient and their doctor. If that patient is under the age of 18, the parents as well, right? And I believe that Medicare for all should cover all health care.
Yeah.
Which is defined by what a patient needs in accordance with their doctor. So that includes reproductive rights, right? That includes gender-affirming care.
Now, Terry, he's not a fringe candidate. He is their nominee now in the Wolverine state. When a man who wants to run your health care says the government should pay to perform these procedures on children, they're barbaric procedures, what does that tell parents about who is driving the Democrats right now?
Well, it tells a lot, and it's telling them that it's not someone that believes that parents should be actually directing the healthcare and the education decisions of their children. But at a more fundamental level, let's look at other nations that have so-called Medicare for all. Canada has Medicare for all. They have socialized medicine. It's a single-payer system. And yes, Canada will pay for grown men to get breast implants. They will pay for full sexual reconstructive and destructive surgeries. But here's the thing. Canada also assassinates old people when they get too old, and they deny them coverage for treatment that can make their lives last a lot longer, right? And so the reality is that no health insurance company, Medicaid or Medicare, should ever pay for anyone to get a sex change procedure. Why? Because these procedures are so expensive, and the idea that you're going to pay not for something that's not even necessary, but for something that causes obvious damage and destruction to the individual at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating. We did a whole report on the $4.5 billion transgender industry, by the way. It costs $450,000 for a male to get full reconstructive surgery to try and become a female. $650,000 for a female to do the same. They're denying coverage to people that have cancer. They're denying coverage to people that literally have life-saving treatment that they could afford. But no, the government there is mandating that you have to provide sex change treatments to minors and adults. I'm sorry, there's no justification for giving it to children ever, even if it's taxpayer funded. No, nothing at all. You should never harm a child. But even with adults, if you're a grown adult, you should pay for it. But these guys want to pay for sex changes, not just for grown adults. They want to pay for them for felons. They want to pay for them for illegal immigrants, for crying out loud. This is a movement that just wants to destroy and sterilize. I think that's the thing that gets missed in this whole gender debate. You're sterilizing people. I don't care if they're adults. I don't care if they're children. You're targeting a mentally ill and vulnerable population that needs actual care, actual treatment that will help them feel comfortable in their own bodies. And instead of doing that, you're sterilizing them. That's called eugenics at best, and it's called genocide at worst.
Rules for thee and not for me, the double standard of the far left. Your team pulled the education video that Democrat Socialists of America are actually circulating, so let's show a piece of it.
In the last 8 months, Democratic Socialist candidates all over this country have been winning major victories.
We've also seen several candidates backed by the Democratic Socialists of America topple incumbent Democrats in primaries.
The co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America was asked about their platform yesterday.
Abolish the Senate. True. Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them. Yep. Defund the Pentagon. Absolutely.
A tweet from congressional candidate Cori Bush.
She called for defunding the Pentagon.
Well, we talk about defunding the Pentagon.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah.
Are prisons obsolete?
I mean, what purpose do they serve?
We need to completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department.
The language that we have in there is abolishing the police and prison system.
End policing as we know it.
defunding the police has to happen.
Abolishing policing is one segment of reforming our criminal justice system.
A now deleted Twitter account of a Democratic Socialist, Arliza Avila-Chevier, posts and reposts supporting abolishing police, prisons, and borders.
I believe that we do need to defund the police.
I have voted against raises for police officers that bankrupted the city.
You think about like cash bail as a system, what we're doing is discriminating against poverty.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally. As a long-term plan, yep.
I want to legalize 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 million people in our country.
There has to be an immediate pathway for every single undocumented immigrant.
We've got millions of people who are living here in the shadows. There needs to be a path to citizenship.
Get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented.
We need to be focusing on a pathway to citizenship for those who are here.
We have 11 million people here who need a pathway to citizenship.
I'm very supportive of bringing immigrants here to stay.
We think that there should be ways for people to stay here.
We ought to have a path for those folks to stay.
Abolish ICE. Absolutely.
We have to abolish ICE.
This agency should be abolished.
ICE has to be abolished.
Abolish ICE.
We need to rip up ICE.
I've said ICE not only needs to be abolished, they need to be prosecuted.
ICE will be abolished. DHS will be dismantled.
In 2018, I was calling for the abolishing of ICE.
I voted against the creation of ICE.
If it were up to me, we would completely overhaul ICE, strip the agency down to the studs.
Would you be in support of defunding ICE?
I am, yes.
Is the rise of the DSA good for your party?
Look, we are a big tent party.
Just abolish the United States Senate, abolish prisons, and abolish the border. Terry, they wrote that down themselves. And we're talking about Governor J.B. Pritzker to Senator Chuck Schumer. I thought they were the moderates, but how much of that agenda do you think the average Democrat voter even knows about their party activists, which are chasing this far left craziness in our country?
Yeah, no, look, imagine this. Imagine that criminals would want to defund the police. I mean, that's exactly, it's just so logical. Of course, the criminals would want to defund the police and get rid of the military because they're the targets. The reality is they'll never defund the police. They might rename it because they're going to need something to try and arrest all of us for. And that's a very real thing. These Democrats, when they take over, they criminalize oppositional political speech. That's what they do, that they lock in their victories. We've seen this in communist revolution after communist revolution. But I think, look, obviously the DSA is disastrous and would be a nightmare for our country. But I think that the bigger picture that Americans are missing, especially those in the elite media circuits, is that the DSA is rising, even though the DNC and the establishment is spending literally tens of millions of dollars trying to squash them and defeat them. They can't put it out. And why is that? That's because even the populist left, even the radical Democrats in the Democratic Party understand that the establishment Democrats will sell them out. Right? This is not necessarily an indictment of the American system because it's happening on the left. This is an indictment of the Democratic establishment, because for so long we had the same problem, I would say, on the right with the establishment Republicans, and then came the rise of Donald Trump. The big question is, who's going to be the Donald Trump of the left? Because I'm telling you, it's not Gavin Newsom, it's not J.B. Pritzker, it's most likely an AOC. And here's why AOC scares me as a candidate. Because the largest voting bloc in America, if not now by 2028, will be the never married or single woman, right? These are women that have not gotten married, that have not started families. They're communists. And she is appealing to them. There's a whole deliberate strategy right now why AOC, my wife and I were watching this last night. We were scrolling X together. She's doing videos about freezing her eggs. And I was like, this is such a weird thing to talk about. I would never talk about anything this personal if I was in public office. But she's doing it to appeal to a large voting bloc of Americans. And why it gets dangerous is because those women that are not married, that are not fulfilled, that don't have children, they're miserable. And they're looking for someone that looks like them, that can relate to them. So the idea of an AOC presidency is not out of the question. Now, we'll have to gird our loins and put forth a really strong candidate in 2028 to prevent that. But I'm very worried about the rise of the DSA. I don't think it should be discounted. It is a disaster, and they are serious, and they very well could win. They're pulling out these margins in some of these general elections and these special elections by just hairline victories, right? But Kamala Harris was in that video. She is as woke as any of these new woke people that are coming on the scenes now. She came within 3 points of the presidency. 3 points, right? You shift a few of those electoral states over to the Democratic column, and she's president. It's very close, and Republicans really, if I could recommend, Republicans have been doing a great job in the culture war, fighting against all these transgender surgeries and treatments for minors. Where I would tell them to button things up is when it comes to the economy, specifically how the economy works for working families and for young people. Charlie Kirk said it best, young people are priced out of this economy. They can't afford homes. They have a mortgage, but not a mortgage for a house. They have a mortgage of student loan debt, and they can't get jobs to pay it off. They're getting strapped with debt on consumer debt, on credit cards. If we don't fix this right now and give these young people and working families an alternative that's appealing, we are going to lose so badly. And the Democrats, when we've seen what happens when they get power, they milk the cow to death, and we just can't allow that to happen.
Spot on analysis. And we've seen it with Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who is now the Democrat nominee for Senate in Minnesota. She called the federal investigation into the Somali fraud in her own state, and I am quoting her, vile and racist. Let's watch this clip.
You know, this vile, racist stream of consciousness from President Old Man Yells at Cloud. You're disgusting. And the people of this country deserve so much better. I just watched the video of Donald Trump attacking the beautiful Somali community that calls Minnesota home. They are part of the fabric of our state. I'm literally going down Lake Street right now, which is one of the hearts of the Somali community. These are teachers and nurses and neighbors and mayors and our friends. And we are going to stand shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors. And that's just who we are as Minnesotans and what we're going to do.
Terry, I'd love your quick take on this because we're coming right up on a break. But when a Senate nominee calls a fraud investigation that has legs racist, instead of actually backing it and help supporting the evildoers that stole from Americans, who's she actually standing up for?
She's standing up for America's enemies, and I think that's obvious. And one quick factor I'll point out. What's vile and racist is to come to a foreign country that you were never born into, that your parents never served, that your parents never did anything for, that you aren't actually part of, and to plunder it. They stole over $20 billion. To put that in perspective, we throw these billions and trillions around all the time. We put a man on the moon. The entire Apollo project cost $5 billion. That's 4 moon landings, right? And these people stole that from us, and they're demanding that we apologize for pointing out the fraud. I'm sorry, you have to go back. We don't want fraudsters here. You stole billions and billions of dollars from hardworking Americans who don't do that, who have been here, whose parents served, whose aunts and uncles have served, who have served. You stole our money, and we were grateful enough to bring you from a hellhole. Somalia is a hellhole. It is a terrible place, incredible crime, incredible violence, robberies, arson, rapes, all this stuff. We took you from that land of hell and brought you to America, the land of milk and honey, and you stole from us. You got to go back. I'm sorry. You're the one that's vile and racist.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's completely ludicrous, and the audacity of it should have every American Republican and Democrat very upset. Terry, stay right here. Some great stuff with you. More coming. We'll be back right after a short break. Welcome back to the Jenny Beth Show. I'm Robert McNeely in for Jenny Beth, still with Terry Schilling of American Principles Project. Terry, let's flip the coin now because it's not all bad news today. We're having some good news in the middle of August. This administration has actually been winning on the culture, as you mentioned earlier. And Education Secretary Linda McMahon posting a message to the girls heading back to school this week saying that women and girls, as you return to the classes after this patriotic summer, you can trust that this administration will not allow your dignity, privacy, or medals be taken from you by men playing dress up. Put this in plain terms for us. For a mom listening in the car, Terry, what has actually changed for her daughter's locker room and her daughter's team under this administration versus just 2 years ago?
Well, let me put this in WWE terms, right? Linda McMahon did a power hammer 5,000 off the top rope against gender identity. That's what she did. All of this crazy gender ideology stuff that's been pushed on our kids in school has been knocked down. She has made Title IX requirements and Title IX funding subservient to whether or not these schools are putting boys and girls sports. So if you're a school district and you're saying boys can say they're girls and compete in girls sports, or boys can go into women's locker rooms and showers, guess what? You don't get Title IX funding anymore. She's using the power of the purse and being an incredible warrior for the American family and for our girls and our sisters and mothers, and protecting them. This is exactly what you want as a education secretary. I just can't tell you how wonderful Linda McMahon is. She is one of the most effective leaders I've ever seen in government. She does it with a smile on her face, and people really should be afraid of her. If you're trying to destroy our girls' sports, if you're trying to endanger our daughters in their private spaces, Linda McMahon is going to do a stone cold stunner on you and put you out. She's going to pin you, and that's what she's been doing. So, like, out of all of the people in the Trump administration, I would say that she's like at least top 3, probably top 2.
And my apologies to Stone Cold Steve Austin. We have a real rattlesnake in the best of ways. It's Linda McMahon taking a bite out of evil bureaucrats who want to make government big. I mean, that's what's so neat about this. We're streamlining the size and scope of government because the Carter administration put together the Department of Education. Ronald Reagan wanted to get rid of that, did not succeed, unfortunately. And now the Trump administration doing just that. They've just moved to stop taxpayer dollars through Medicaid from paying for sex changes, the procedures on minors, as we discussed earlier. But young people like Chloe Cole, they've lived it, and now they are warning others about this danger. And they've been begging Washington to do exactly what you've been advocating for, Terry. And as a father of daughters, what does this mean to you personally?
Oh, it means the world. And look, I've never really been worried about my daughters. I have, I have 8 kids, right? But I still have always loved being their dad. I'm with them all the time. I have a good relationship with them. I spend one-on-one time with them. It means more, I think, to my grandchildren. It means more to my neighbors, and to know that their kids aren't going to get sucked up into this, right? And we've worked extensively with Chloe Cole. She is the most joyful warrior in the face of adversity and suffering and pain. I mean, you look at what our medical establishment and what our government did to her, and it's absolutely criminal. People should be going to jail just for what they did to Chloe Cole, let alone the tens of thousands of other girls in this country that have gotten double mastectomies, that have been put on Lupron, that have been put through all of these other surgeries at taxpayer expense, by the way. But Chloe Cole has been fighting on the front lines of this. I remember it vividly because one of my campaign, we primarily invest in campaigns and elections. That's the main thrust of what APP does. And we were trying to get detransitioners to do campaign ads. And Chloe Cole was the first one to sign up and do it, because all these other people, they were afraid. They didn't want to speak out. They didn't want to lose all their friends. They didn't want to, come under that scrutiny from the internet class. But Chloe Cole was just fearless, and she did it with a smile. And she has a way of speaking in such a condemning tone, and rightfully so. I mean, she has been hurt more than so many other people, while all these guys became billionaires and millionaires off of it. So it means so much, all the work that Chloe's done, how this movement has really, it started with a very small group of people who didn't know what the hell to do about it, to be frank. And we just teamed up and we kept doing, it was like eating an elephant, bit by bit, bite by bite. And we finally got close. Medicaid's no longer funding it. J.D. Vance and RFK Jr. and Admiral Bobby Christina, HHS, they just released a video and a report today showing how much money the industry makes. And I'm just so happy and proud of how this movement plays out, because it's one of the clear areas where we are winning as a country.
Well, my gratitude to you, Terry, and to your organization, and Chloe as well, because these great patriots fighting to make this all happen, as someone who hopes to be a husband and father like you one of these days, it is what you just said. Get off the sidelines, get off the bench and into the game. For those single men out there, I want to challenge you, coming from a single man himself, get out there and fight in your community. There's so much of this, oh, what can I do? Get in the game. And that's why we bring people like you on here on the Jenny Beth Show to make sure that happens. But let's walk people through what's at stake this election. What does cutting off that funding stream matter so much to stopping this from happening to the next kid? Because we're talking about something that's so permanent and so psychologically affecting these great kids, but also the damage that happens to them physically if they go through with this.
Well, obviously, Lupron is a very powerful drug. This is the drug that they use to chemically castrate sex offenders. Well, they used to. But then the court said that was too cruel to administer Lupron to sex offenders to stop them from raping and assaulting children. But apparently it's medicine for children that have gender dysphoria and are confused about their sex. But look, most of this has been funded by tax dollars, Medicaid and Medicare. It's been pushed through government regulations. Federal regulations under the Obama administration changed a lot of this and made it possible. But I think about the upcoming midterms and what's really at stake. All of that's at stake. But I think at a deeper level, what we will most likely to see if Democrats take over either chamber is a slew of kangaroo court hearings, prosecutions against Trump again, where they will try to impeach him, where they will try to criminally indict everyone they can, especially the people that have been most effective in fighting the trans industry, the $4.5 billion trans industry. And why is that? It's because what Bobby Christina has been doing, Admiral Bobby Christina, HHS, what RFK Jr. has been doing, what J.D. Vance is doing, what President Trump has been doing by protecting our children from this industry is they're cutting into their profits. They're cutting into their livelihoods. If they keep doing this and taking away their taxpayer funding and banning hospitals from getting Medicaid funding, if they perform these, what's going to happen is these billionaire and millionaire doctors that have been making money off of this are going to have to sell their fancy Lamborghini. They're going to have to sell their second and third vacation homes, right? There's real stuff at stake for these people. So they're going to protect it at all costs. We just need to be braver than them. And we can't allow these guys to have a single inch when it comes to the upcoming midterms, because if they take back a single chamber, it's going to be nothing but nonstop criminal accusations and garbage kangaroo court hearings. It'll be terrible.
Amen to that. And gosh, they want to abolish everything. So we'll just have a unicameral system, right? And they'll appoint a president from the House of Representatives. How ridiculous. Now, I need a quick favor, a PSA to our patriots watching, and then right back to Terry. If what Mr. Schilling is laying out today is the kind of straight talk you cannot get from the mainstream media, hit that like and subscribe right now. It's free. Takes 2 seconds, and it's how we get around their spin and put this in front of more constitutional conservatives like you at home. Tell us about American Principles Project and where the viewers can find your imperative work, Terry, because you are really doing God's work.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. I agree. Look, we're the premier political organization defending the American family in campaigns, elections, and public policy. We invest millions of dollars behind pro-family, America first, family first candidates. We get them elected, and then we work with them when they're in office to pass laws to protect our kids, help working families get ahead in this economy, and protect the next generation. It's very simple. Every industry in this town, including clowns, by the way, they have the National Balloon Society. But every industry, every group in this country has a special interest arm in DC. American Principles Project is that for the American family. We punish politicians when they hurt our kids and hurt our rights as parents, and we help reward the guys that are standing in the breach and doing the bravest stuff possible by standing up to the most evil activists and industry tycoons that we've ever seen.
Well, thank you for doing so. I didn't know the clowns had special interest in Washington, D.C. Learn something new every day. But there's a phrase you have for this very moment. You say it right here. We are in woke 2, where even the establishment candidates have been forced to adopt the same trans for everyone. And that cultural agenda that's taking place, these guys will still increase cost of living for families. But don't worry, they'll give private equity dollars to watch your kids. Terry, define it for us. And what's the difference between the woke wave everyone remembers from a few years ago and now the woke 2 you say we are living in right now?
So woke 1 was when the disruptors, the democratic revolutionaries, so to speak, rose to the scene. They were offensive. They brushed the leadership class the wrong way. But woke 2 is the fact that they've co-opted leadership. I saw a video clip. It was a montage of all the establishment Democrats that are now saying how great AOC is, including Chuck Schumer and including Nancy Pelosi. They're all saying how compelling she is, how she can appeal to a mass class of voters that will put them over the finish line in years to come, and how everyone loves working with her. Well, that wasn't the case when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House. Nancy Pelosi didn't really like her because she was holding up the legislation. Woke 2 is the official takeover of the entire Democratic Party, including the establishment, by these woke activists like Ilhan Omar, like Rashida Tlaib, like AOC, and it's now what they're doing. And so the cultural agenda is always going to be there now in the Democratic Party. You used to have people like moderates, like so-called moderates like Seth Moulton, who came out and said, I don't know, I think there might be something to not letting boys and girls sports. My daughter plays soccer. I don't really know if I want some guys trucking her down and running her over. He got punished. He's in a primary now against Ed Markey. Now he's completely capitulated to the woke. But the reality is that their economic agenda is going to be even more disastrous, because the cultural agenda, I think in a lot of ways, is meant to destroy our spirit. The economic agenda is meant to distract us from being able to fight that culture war. And so they're going to tax us more. They're complaining about gas prices. What do you think gas prices are going to be under the Green New Deal? Because right now it's temporary. It's not an actual decision. Trump is not trying to increase energy prices. It's the cost of trying to get nuclear weapons out of the hands of the Iranians. This is actually a goal of the Democratic Party. I was just in California a couple weeks ago. $7 a gallon in San Francisco to fill up my rental car. $7, right? In Virginia, a Democrat state, it's $4.30. Democrats want to raise your cost of living. They want to tax you with their Green New Deal programs. They want to tax you in your labor. They want to sell you out to private equity, by the way. They will do that. And they'll empower. They'll give money to childcare corporations, but they don't tell you that childcare has been taken over by private equity. It's totally crazy, but this is what woke 2 is. It's the official takeover of the entire Democratic establishment to become woke.
And they hate private property rights, an essential component to a free constitutional republic. Ben Shapiro looked at the Wisconsin results and argued that establishment Democrats did not beat the socialists in the primaries. Oh, no. They were just negotiating the terms of their own surrender and demise. So mirroring the socialist platform while pretending to hold the line. Do you agree with Ben and buy into that read, or is the party simply being taken over, or is it voluntarily handing it over to the socialists? Because, as I mentioned before, these are group thinkers. They don't want you to have inalienable rights. They hate the Constitution and they hate our founding dating back 250 years as we celebrate.
Yeah, how I would break it down is I think that the loudest and most active part of the Democratic Party is the woke wing. This is probably about 30% of the party. I don't think it's a majority that's actually pushing sex changes for kids. But what's happening, though, is that these 70% of Democrats or people that lean Democrat or vote Democrat, they're getting fooled. They're getting fooled by the mainstream media's narratives. There's two ways to lie. There's you can tell a deliberate lie to deceive someone, or you can lie by omission. And that is what we see so often in the legacy media is we lie by omission. They tell you one story, but they don't tell you the other half. They tell you one story, but they don't cover the other stories that are more present. They don't really talk a lot about gender surgeries for minors online or on mainstream television. They don't talk about the mainstream press and the newspapers. And so I think a lot of these 70% of Democrats, I do think that if there was a targeted campaign, if the media just started telling half the truth sometimes or half the other story, I think a lot of those people would actually see how crazy the Democratic Party is. But right now, that 70% is kind of lulled to sleep. They see Trump saying funny stuff on Twitter or whatever, and then they take that to the worst logical conclusions, and then they just vote Democrat. And they also, by the way, they see what's happening in the economy, and they don't see real changes quick enough. And so I think that's my assessment of the Democratic Party. I think that there has been a woke takeover. That is woke too. And I agree with Ben. I think that what happened was this Crowley guy is no more woke than Francesca Hong. He's just as woke. He just doesn't have the overt voting record and the overt public statements. He's a city administrator. So I do think it was more a negotiation of the terms than anything, but they're going to be just as woke, and they're going to push all the same policies on our families and children.
Yeah, the Democrat Party, very good at taking a bite out of their own, and then the wolves, the hounds, surround it and devours it. I think that's what happened to Hong in Wisconsin, because we'll have some very far-left policies with Mr. Crowley if he's successful in the Dairyland, the Badger State, which I just came from recently. I love Wisconsin, even though I'm a Chicago Bears fan, but don't tell them that. Good luck to the Packers tonight in the preseason versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. So happy to have football underway with all this craziness. Yes. But here's the question, Terry. Every family really caring about this. If there is this culture war happening, if this is where everything's heading, how do you advise regular parents actually fighting woke too so they can win instead of just being steamrolled by it?
One, get your family to church every Sunday, right? I feel like a lot of Americans, they're Christian, they believe in Jesus, they love him, but they get distracted. Everyone's working so much, man. And even when we're not at our job, at our 9 to 5 or our career job, we're still distracted by these freaking phones, man. I mean, it's just nonstop advertising and propaganda. And so by the end of the week, we just want to hang out and be at home. You got to get your family to church. It means so much. There's spiritual effects. There's mental effects. It's going to strengthen you. You're going to learn a lot when you go to church, but make sure it's a good church, right? But the other thing is have these conversations with your children. We can't stop every crazy person from saying every crazy things. Your kids are going to be exposed to it. So at the age appropriate ages and an age appropriate level, talk to them about these things. Talk to them about how great it is to be a boy. Talk to them about how great it is to be a girl. Talk to them about the importance of loving God and going to church. Talk to them about the importance of family. Talk to them about the importance of America. These kids today, they can't read, right? 34% of kids can read at grade level across the country. That's according to the National Assessment for Educational Progress. Kids in Chicago, 10% of kids can read at grade level in the Chicago School District. It's crazy. Talk to your kids, monitor them, take a step back from work every now and then. That's something I've been very deliberate about recently, is just taking a step, because you can get addicted to your job. You can convince yourself that it's the most important thing at the time, but your kids need you. And the other thing is, to all the young men out there, find that girl, marry her as soon as you know she's the one, because you're going to mess around, you're going to delay it, and then by the time you know it, you're not going to be able to have the kids God wanted you to have. Get married, start a family, build a legacy, protect your kids. It's that simple. Go to church on Sunday. It's the basics. We're just not doing the basics, man. It's so obvious, Robert.
And Terry, I'll say it publicly, but I will talk to you for advice off camera, because I'm looking for that one. So I know you can help with that, because you got great advice.
No Tinder, no apps.
Yeah, no apps. Get off the apps. Go meet people in person. I love it. Terry, thank you so much. I completely endorse everything you're talking about. Get in that biblically based church, get involved in Young Life. I think of Young Catholic Professionals, Christian Professionals Network right here in Atlanta, Georgia. That's a great one too. Yes. And the American Church coming together, as Charlie Kirk once spoke of, our dear friend, as we approach the 1-year anniversary of his passing. What a selfless soul he was, as he watches over us from heaven. Terry, before I let you go, tell the folks what you have coming up with American Principles Project.
All right. Well, check us out online, AmericanPrinciplesProject.org. In the next 2 weeks, we are unveiling to the general public Fathers Wanted. It's our first ever documentary on fatherhood and family, the attacks against men, the importance of getting married. If you want to help in like how to find that girl, and the costs of not becoming a father, the costs to you, to society, to America of not starting a family, fatherswanted.org. It's an amazing documentary. Tucker's in it. A bunch of great American heroes are in it. Brandon Gill is in it. It's a great movie. I enjoyed it. It talks about my father. There's the personal aspect into it, but it goes into the real life consequences of young people not getting married and starting families. And so check it out, fatherswanted.org. I'm very proud of it. I went all over the country, put a lot of work into it. So check it out and sign up today.
Amazing work right there, my friend. Terry Schilling, president of American Principles Project. Thank you for coming on and sharing clarity today, and come back soon on the Jenny Beth Show.
Thanks, Robert.
Now, folks, stay with us. When we come back, a man who has spent his life fighting for the truth after this quick break.
You are the grassroots of America. You love this country. When you love something, really love it, the news doesn't just inform you, it fires you up. And you find yourself asking, how can I make a difference? That is exactly what this show is built to answer. Never, ever, ever, ever give up. We owe it to every American who has ever voted to make America great again. We owe it to our future selves. We owe it to this republic to stand tall, to stay active, and to be smart about how we spend our energy so that we can win. Here on the Jenny Beth Show, we're going to help you do exactly that. Every show, we will break down the news, connect it to first principles, and give you specific, effective ways to take action. Not just outrage, action. And I am so glad you're here on this journey with us to do it. So let's get to it.
Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Patriots, welcome back. My next guest is someone we have never had on this program, and it's truly an honor to have him. A personal touch. He helped open my eyes to the presence of God in a college debate series that took place at my alma mater at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Oh, it was way back in 2010, where he debated the reality of God with a former Christian minister turned atheist. New York Times bestselling author and director of 2016 Obama's America, Hillary's America, and 2,000 Mules. It's Mr. Dinesh D'Souza. Thank you for joining us, Dinesh. You have a new book available for pre-order. Tell us all about it and how people can get a copy of The Stones Cry Out.
I have plunged myself the past 3 years in the field of biblical archaeology, which I encountered for the first time the end of 2022 when I went to Israel with my wife. And I found myself kind of in the land of the Bible, but then I began to see these artifacts that corroborate not just the Bible in the big scheme of things, the big figures like King David or the prophet Isaiah, or of course, the figures around Jesus, but also some of the tiny details in the Bible. And I was so blown away by this that I said to my wife, I go, I don't know why this information isn't like shouted from the rooftops of every church and synagogue. And there are reasons for that, of course. But in any case, I have put it all into a book, 150 years of biblical archaeology, just dozens and dozens of findings that support the Bible all the way from Abraham through the book of Acts, Old Testament and New Testament both. And it comes out in early October, but you can pre-order it now from Amazon. The Stones Cry Out, and the subtitle is just Biblical Archaeology, Prophecy, and the Last Days.
Oh, I love this topic so much because it's heavily debated, this topic within Christian denominations. For example, the argument over dispensationalism. Now, where do you stand on this topic, and is it possibly affecting American foreign policy?
Yeah, I don't think of myself as a dispensationalist per se, but I also think, look, you can't look at biblical archaeology and see the presence of the Jews in their ancestral homeland going back at least 3,000 years. I mean, there are some indications of going back all the way to Abraham, which would be about 2000 BC. But even if you start with King David and Solomon, the kind of royal period in Israel, that's 3,000 years ago. That's about 1000 BC. And then all the way through, you'll see these artifacts. Archaeology is the science of pulling things out of the ground. It can be an arrowhead. It can be a clay seal, sometimes, huge walls and stone inscriptions, writings on pottery called ostraca. And so it's quite stunning to see these biblical figures, which, by the way, many of them have been taken on faith for thousands of years. And now suddenly there is extra biblical or non-biblical corroborating evidence. So, when I hear people say things like, Israel is a colonizer, I think to myself, well, how do you colonize your own land? I mean, this is like accusing the Indians of colonizing India or the Irish of colonizing Ireland. I mean, the whole idea is a little absurd.
Oh, exactly. And I think it's really interesting to see the far left or the atheist voices out there in America. They really attack so many books in the Bible, but Leviticus and the Levitical priesthood that Catholic, Orthodox, even Protestant pastors, priests can all trace their lineage back to. It's clearly there, historically speaking, whether or not someone agrees with it. And I've always been impressed with your resume, as I'm sure many in our audience know. You worked in the Reagan administration and have truly been in the room where it happens. How would you compare the 1980s to the present day, what's going on, and the similarities between, and differences even, between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, it's worth remembering that the 1980s were themselves a kind of MAGA period. By that I mean, Reagan's slogan against Carter in 1980, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" The implicit answer, of course, no. And so Reaganism was like, let's get back to a better America. And in some ways, Reaganism was an attempt to correct the abuses and excesses of the 60s. And the whole period that began with FDR, continuing with LBJ. But I think in mood, the 80s were optimistic, forward-looking. I describe Reagan's conservatism. I wrote a book on Reagan called Ronald Reagan, How an Ordinary Man Became an Extraordinary Leader. And my theme was that Reagan represented this kind of big sky conservatism. He's kind of like a cowboy, riding into the sunset, again, silhouetted against this massive landscape. And all of us, when we graduated from college, we wanted to be part of the Reagan years. We had a certain kind of mocking contempt for the left. We saw ourselves as being the cool people and them as being sort of the uncool people. So I think in mood, it's a little different now. The MAGA movement in tone is a little more narrow. It's a little more fearful of the future. I think a lot of young people don't see the American dream available to them. There's a little bit of a bitter edge to it. Perhaps it's a little more conspiratorial, but again, with justification, right? Because a lot of conspiracies came through. A lot of trusted institutions betrayed their trust. So back in the Reagan era, if you had told me like the FBI is going to be systematically lying to you, I would be like, are you kidding me? So I had more of the movie, The Untouchables, that kind of view of the FBI until the Trump era. Same with the CDC, the idea that you'd have a Dr. Fauci type figure. By the way, he goes back to the Reagan years. And this idea that he would really not care about the epidemic, or even more, he likes epidemics because that's what gets him on the cover of InStyle magazine. Right. And he's faking academic studies. He's concerned about awards and monetary prizes, and can he keep the money? I mean, this stuff would be truly kind of like mind-blowingly unbelievable in the Reagan era, but sadly, it's become a feature of our life in recent years.
Yes, the double standard by Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates and others really erroneous, and it's a travesty. And you suffered it yourself. You're a political prisoner. So for those just watching who don't know your background, you definitely suffered at the hands of what seems to be a Tom Clancy novel rather than real life. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Iran has been a problem really for Western civilization over the course of nearly 50 years. Tell us what's different, if anything, about the 1983 Marine barracks bombings in Beirut, Lebanon, compared to the present day.
Well, in the Reagan era, the focus was on the Cold War and this Islamic stuff, which was starting to simmer because, of course, the Iranian Revolution is a true revolution. When you think of revolutions, and, these days people promiscuously use the word revolutions, a revolution in style, a revolution in this, a revolution in that. And what they really just mean is something kind of important. But a revolution is really a turning of a society upside down in a lasting way. So there's an American Revolution, French Revolution, of course, the Russian Revolution. The Iranian Revolution is of that magnitude, by which I mean it created a very different society than the one that was there before. And however, in the Reagan era, there were a lot of Muslims who were fighting against the Soviet Union. Remember, in Afghanistan, the Soviets invaded. A kind of coalition of Muslims from many Muslim countries were on the front line fighting the Soviets. And we, the United States, under Reagan, were helping them, not by sending troops, but by sending arms. And so the Beirut bombing was kind of an anomaly in that sense, because we had not been exposed to the kind of full machinations of the Islamic revival. And Iran is a part of that, but it's only one part of that. So I would say that today, the key problem with Iran is this, that these are guys who are trying to get their hands on nuclear weapons. Well, there's nothing new about that, like welcome to the club. But for them to have a nuclear weapon is a little different than even North Korea. Not because the North Koreans aren't fanatical or nuts in a sense, but no one thinks that the North Korean leadership is inherently suicidal. But with the mullahs, they tell you they are. They're like, we love death more than life, and so you can not believe them. And there is reason to be somewhat skeptical. It's like, well, how many mullahs have made themselves into suicide bombers? So, those kinds of questions are legitimate. But on the other hand, this profession of martyrdom, which is strong in Islam, but particularly strong in Shia Islam, which is what the Iranians are, is a reason, I think, to recognize we're dealing here with something a little different than, let's say, even China having a nuclear weapon.
Yes, probably the closest thing we have in the modern day to the Japanese war class of World War II, that death was the ultimate goal, or willing to go there in order to enact their vision of global society. And for anyone who loves motion pictures as I do, Argo and Charlie Wilson's War, good for historical context and in the so-called mainstream, to go back to those dates that you were mentioning there, Dinesh. But this regime says it's the victim here, that the pressure is unfair. And why should we not necessarily take Tehran's word for it as this engagement continues?
Well, the Iranians, and by the way, this is true of Islam generally, it has learned the language of victimization from the Western left. Because a lot of how the Muslims see it, they see it in a very victorious, non-victim way. For example, take a topic like colonialism. If you look at Islamic literature over now 1,300 years, it's extremely pro-colonialism. Basically, Islam's job, its mission right out of the Quran, is go colonize the world, put it under the house of Allah. And they call the non-colonized world the house of war, meaning we have to keep fighting over there to bring them under our subjugation. So colonialism is essentially a great positive in Islam. But they know that when they're selling Islam in the West, you can't say that because colonialism is kind of a bad thing. This is why they love the Israel-Palestine issue and in a very bogus way try to make it seem like Israel's the colonizer, the Palestinians are the colonized. Well, first of all, when Islam came around in the 7th century, the entire Holy Land was all Christian. Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Jerusalem, all of it. So the Muslims overrun the place with their armies. They conquer, they subjugate, they take the holiest site in Judaism and Christianity and stick an Islamic victory arch on the top of it. So their objection to Israel is just this. It's that, hey, we colonized it at one time, and now the Jews have come back and taken it back. So it's gone out of the house of Allah into the house of war. That's their real objection. Not that they don't have a problem with colonization as long as they're doing it.
Excellent point. Now, let's change gears for a moment. The last 2 weeks have been dominated with news of DSA candidates in states like Michigan and Wisconsin. Tell us your thoughts on that and the potential problems, as if you've mentioned here, the unholy marriage between Islam, radical Islam, and far-left American Western values that really want to take down our society as we know it.
So what's going on here is that if we think back to socialism at its root, of Marxism, it was based upon this idea of the rich against the poor, or to put it differently, the bourgeoisie against the proletariat, or the managers versus the working class. It was essentially an economic phenomenon. And this socialism, this Marxism has mutated in two different forms. One form is the idea of, of identity socialism, as I've called it in an earlier book. Identity socialism means we don't just look at the rich against the poor. We also look at the white against the black, the male against the female, the straight against the gay. So what we do is we take lots of these identities, create a kind of division, declare our own side to be the victim, and then try to create a coalition of victims. So Marx expected the coalition to be the working class, but for the left wants it to be the workers plus the blacks, plus the Hispanics, plus the gays, plus the trans. So it's a different type of coalition based upon multiple divisions in society. That's one thing to keep in mind. That's the new face of the red. When we talk about the red and green alliance, this is the red. Now the green is the kind of interesting intersection point between Islam and socialism. Islam has never strictly been committed to socialism per se, But Islam recognizes that its entry into America and the West needs an enabler, needs a local, it's like a local guide as to show me if I'm a Somalian guy. True, I'm coming from a society where I rip everybody off, but that doesn't mean I know how to rip people off in America. I need someone to show me how to do that. I set up an NGO, do this, do that, Leering centers, this is what you do. So the left is all too willing to play that role. And so this is a just diabolical kind of coalition. And then you've got guys like Mamdani and El Sayed who actually represent the red and the green. In other words, they're not on one side making an alliance. They have one aspect of themselves that is red, and they have one aspect of themselves that's green. And they are committed to, on the one hand, the socialist agenda, and on the other hand, equally important to them, Islamification of New York, of Michigan, and so on.
Excellent analysis. It's so true. But even with all of those difficulties, I have some optimism. Your son-in-law, in fact, Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas, one of the rising stars in the Republican Party. And are you more concerned, Dinesh, about the candidate quality, the communist left, or having that hope in the future? And what's your take on how Republicans can perform in these midterm elections only 82 days away?
Well, from a certain distance, I do kind of respect the savvy of guys like Mamdani and El Sayed. They are more formidable when you listen to them than they might seem in theory. Mamdani is a very agile and effective campaigner. He's brilliant at his social media videos. He's very clever not to come across like a Bin Laden or, a Khomeini, unattractive type of figure with a ridiculous robe, a gigantic beard. So he's hip, he's a bit Ugandan, and he's a little bit Asian Indian, and he's a bit of a rapper. And so he's able to sort of combine this eclectic strand of things and pull them together so nobody can really pin him down very easily. And so we need a lot of young, dynamic candidates on the right. This is why actually my son-in-law is doing so great, is because he's young, he's smart, he's social media savvy, whereas the typical Republican is, a bit of a stick in the mud. I mean, they're not dynamic. In fact, they're not even all that ideological. I'm a little surprised to learn through Brandon about how transactional so many Republicans are. They're like, okay, well, you want me to push your bill? They don't even want to discuss the merits of the bill. It's like, well, what are you going to do for me? Like, are you going to put some money into my campaign? And if so, I'll push your bill. I mean, these guys act as if politics is nothing more than another type of business. And their job is to sort of advance their particular, they're like political entrepreneurs of a sort. Now, Brandon is a political entrepreneur, but with the goal of saving the country. So that's the goal. And the political entrepreneurship is a means. Whereas for a lot of these Republicans, sad to say, the political entrepreneurship is the goal.
Right, yeah, for themselves, of course, the D.C. establishment way. Dinesh D'Souza, director and producer and author of the new book, The Stones Cry Out. Where can we find you, Dinesh? And also, where can we get people on the website to pre-order this remarkable research you've done over the last 3 years?
Well, my website is just DineshD'Souza.com, and there's a link to pre-order the book there. But you can just pre-order it off of Amazon. I also do a weekly show called Dinesh. It's on video and X and Rumble and YouTube, and also in audio in Apple and Spotify. And follow my Substack. I write articles regularly. It's DineshD'Souza.substack.com.
Well, thank you for joining us for the first time today, and please come back on the Jenny Beth Show very soon.
Happy to do it.
Now let's wrap up what we've discovered over the last hour or so. If there is one thread through today, it is simply this. The institutions that spent years deciding who to target are finally being made to answer for it. And the movement that wants to abolish your United States Senate and pay for surgeries on your kids is counting on you not paying attention. So do not give them that. Stay awake, not woke, and stay engaged in your political process. Now, before we go, a personal note. Karoline Leavitt announced this week, just yesterday, in fact, that she is stepping down as the White House press secretary at the end of the month to spend more time with her family and her young children. She was the youngest person ever to hold that job, and she carried it with a lot of grace under much fire. We are thrilled that she will be staying on as an advisor to President Trump, and he shared on True Social his pleased nature over not only her contributions as the greatest of all time press secretary, but also her voice moving forward. The Republican Party needs a strong voice like hers moving forward, and I'm thrilled to have Karoline in those ranks doing it right there in real time with the President of the United States. So from all of us here at Tea Party Patriots Action, Karoline, thank you and congratulations. Cherish this stretch with those little ones. And anyone who's raised kids, I get to watch it from afar, but they'll tell you the same thing. It goes by in a blink of a moment, and you never get those years back. So enjoy them, and thank you, Karoline Leavitt, for your service. If socialism, that conversation with Terry hit home for you today with our great Terry Schilling and Dinesh D'Souza, do two things right now. Subscribe to this channel so the mainstream media does not get the last word. Click the episode coming up on your screen right now as well, where we dug into the Democrat Socialists of America's plan to come after the United States Senate itself. It's worth your time. So that is the news for today. I'm Robert McNeely. Thank you for joining us this episode of the Jenny Beth Show. We will see you right back here tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern for Common Sense Principles Saving Our Constitutional Republic. God bless you and yours, and God bless the United States of America.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. It really helps us reach more people who care about liberty and the Constitution. You can find this and other episodes at jennybethshow.com, as well as Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, X, and your favorite podcast platform.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.